Minister, nice to see you again. When we last spoke at Ethics, we talked about write-offs came up, and I asked about the whether you were able to disclose the largest write-off that happened last year. Is that are you able to disclose that today?
You're well aware of the CRA Act and Clause 241 that forces us to be very cautious. It forces us to be very cautious and make sure that information that we make public or put in the public domain does not allow us to identify, be it directly or indirectly, any taxpayer. So that is why we had to group together this information before making it public.
My concern is that in 2019, your predecessor and the CRA made that figure available to the public. And then just last year, you also released that figure to Senator Down in an order paper question through the Senate. So I'm confused as to why all of a sudden now there's some policy change on not being able to disclose to Canadians the largest single write-off to an individual or only a corporate taxpayer we're asking. We're not asking for somebody's personal information. We're not even asking for the name of the company, although I think that would be well within our rights to start asking for. Is it like at one point it was $133 million in 2019. I assume the reason is it's such a big number that we don't want to disclose it. Is that fair?
C'est pas une question de volonté ou de.
It's not a matter of willingness or unwillingness to make the information available. It's really following the advice of our lawyers and tax experts who feel that if we were to disclose this information in detail, you could identify the taxpayer in question, and we can't take that risk.
I understand that. As a lawyer, I understand they sometimes like to give the advice the client wants to hear. I find it hard to understand why a couple of years ago, even 1 year ago, that this figure was publicly available, and yet today it is not. And I understand we're not going to get that today, but we will continue pushing for that. Minister, the Globe and Mail had mentioned earlier in September that write-offs for last year totaled about $4.9 billion. But that was before the end of the year had finished. I'm curious if you could tell the committee what's the total write-offs for last year now that we have the final books closed for the year.
Alors, pour l'année
Well, for 2023-24, the definitive figures will be tabled with the public accounts. I can give you the latest figures. So the amount for write-offs will be $4.3 billion.
For taxes, like is this corporate write-offs, personal write-offs altogether, or what's included in that number?
All write-offs combined, be they individuals or corporations or trusts.
And you're saying we'll get that number in the public accounts, I suppose, on Monday. Okay, and that's the number we'll see in the public accounts?
Oui.
Okay.
Yes.
I saw that CRA had identified in a press release they had noted about $1.1 billion through audits that should have been examined for carousel schemes, GST schemes in 2017-18. So this predates you, Minister. But I'm curious, have you been able to collect any of that money yet?
Le dilemme avec ça.
The dilemma with this and the complexity of this question is that all our collection efforts are done for various debts to the agency, be it individuals, companies, tax debts, or carousel schemes. So the system doesn't allow us to identify the result of collection of carousel schemes versus all collections done by the agency.
Since we're all also talking about write-offs, I'm curious about the underused housing tax. My understanding is that the CRA has spent actually more money on administration than it's assessed to collect. The last figure from an order paper question was that the CRA assessed $49 million owing in underused housing tax. How much of that has been collected? When has any of that been written off?
Oui, absolument. Puis,
Yes, absolutely. The last time we checked revenue generated by this underused housing tax, it was higher than the administration cost. That was the first year. The year isn't over yet, and even at this time, we collected more than the administrative cost. So at the end of the year, it'll certainly be higher. It will increase as well in coming years, because when we have a new program like this, to implement a risk assessment system, we have to do a sampling to refine our risk management system. So
On the underused housing tax?
est-ce que would you just repeat?
Have you written off any amounts owing under that underused housing tax?
J'en doute, mais encore une.
I doubt it, but once again, I don't have the details of these write-offs by category, but it's so recent that it's improbable, because we take some time. Before we write off something, a lot of effort is deployed.